Welcome to Gospel Truth with Andrew Wommack, celebrating 25 years of sharing God's unconditional love and grace on television. And now, here's Andrew.
Welcome to a very special edition of the Gospel Truth broadcast. I'm Andrew Wommack, and I've got Stephen Bransford with me. He's the guy that has been with me for 26 years, but this is the 25th anniversary of us being on television, and Stephen is the one who God sent to me, and he helped us get started, and we've been talking about that this week. Right before we get to talking about this again, let me just say that we're giving testimony about what God has done for us, but really testimonies are a credit to God and what He's done, and what He's done for us, He will do for you. And so I've got a lot of material on, I've got this little booklet entitled Believing is Seeing. It's got a picture of a little kid sitting on something, and you can just imagine his imagination is going wild. This is an introduction to my teaching on imagination. This is taking the limits off of God, and then I've got books on this, CDs, a study guide and everything, and we're going to be talking about that some today because this is something that just totally changed my life. But 25 years ago, this week is when we started on television, and from January of 2000 until January of 2002, this ministry doubled. Now, I had been in ministry at that time for 32 years, and in 2 years, we doubled what I had done in 32 years being on radio and traveling and ministering and doing things. So it was a phenomenal increase, but the Lord was about to shake my world when He told me that I was limiting Him by my small thinking. Do you remember when that happened?
I do. And I remember that program. In fact, in the 12-minute video we did on Monday, that's featured, that actual program where you're beginning to relate that revelation that you'd received. And we were in that small building, and then everything began to grow.
Now, we had been on television at that time for 2 years, and we had, I think, 28 employees total in the ministry. That's including running the Bible school.
Right.
So how many employees did we have in television at that time?
3.
3. How many do we have now?
I don't know. Somebody would have to help me know that.
We're doing all kinds of things, and I would estimate it's well over 100 people now that are involved.
But it's being funded by those 70,000 partners of yours, Andrew, who I love. And I'm one of them. And I love that they have such a heart for the vision God gave you. And they followed you through that transition. Now, your original radio partners came on board, but after 2 years on television, you had added double to that group.
Yep.
And so in 2002, when you went on television and related this change, of course, the change didn't occur. It didn't look like that to anyone except for us behind the scenes.
Well, there was no evidence. It was just something God had spoken.
And I remember when you began looking for the next building to accommodate the growth of the school, because if you remember, the student body grew to where we had to take television out of that classroom. And we went on the road for a while with your program, producing it here and there. We actually once produced it in a warehouse. We piled the set, that original set, took it apart, had it up against the wall in the warehouse where it had originally been built.
Yeah.
And that was 5 blocks from our building. And we took you over there and did programs one day, and your breath could be seen because it was so cold.
I remember that.
We decided we got to get indoors somewhere.
But let me say that we started January 2000, and there was an awesome response. In the summer of 2000, we went on God TV in Europe. And that was a big step.
Yeah.
And that was another miracle because even though it was a step of faith, I couldn't keep up the payments. And within 2 months, I had to give my cancellation notice. But Wendy Alec had turned out, when she got born again, I was one of the ones that the Lord used to speak to her. And she allowed me to stay on for, I'm not sure the exact length of time, I think it was 3 to 6 months, while I went to my partners in Europe and asked them to help sponsor it. And so we're still on God TV twice a day now, and we've been on since 2000 just because of the generosity of Wendy Alec.
I think that was one of those signs that God was at work here, because no business decision would have advised you to take on Europe. The European Union at that point was where you uplinked. We couldn't raise funds there. You asked me about that before you went on in God TV, and I said, we can't raise any funds there. This is going to be an outreach. So you told me later that because I said that, you had put a clause in your contract for cancellation. Mm-hmm. And when you had to exercise that cancellation, then we were allowed to stay on for free until your audience built enough over there to be able to support
Plus,
it.
by the end of the year, I remember I added Birmingham, an individual station, and so we added 2 more stations. So by the end of the first year, we had my original program on INSP, we had God TV, and 2 independent stations. And at that time, we were probably reaching like 5% or something of the U.S. population, and then through God TV, people outside of there. So anyway, I remember you were talking about us looking for a new facility. We just outgrew the place we had over on Robinson Street. And so while I was gone on a foreign trip, when I came back, Jamie picked me up and says, I got to show you this building. She'd been out looking for buildings while I was gone. And she took me by a place that was 30,000 square feet. And she said, this will last us for the rest of our lives. From 14,000, basically double. And she said, this will last us the rest of our lives. And I knew that wasn't going to last us. I knew my vision was big, but I'd really been in training for 30-something years. It wasn't time for that vision to come to pass. Plus, every time I would speak forth my vision, people would look at the thousands of people that were staying away from my meetings and thinking, this isn't going to work. So I got to where I wasn't speaking my vision. And even Jamie, who I share everything with Jamie, and yet she didn't understand the scope of my vision. And that really bothered me. I remember as she was showing me this building, I thought, God, what's wrong that even Jamie isn't thinking bigger than this? And so there was a number of things that came together, but the Lord, over 2 or 3 months, showed me some things. And then he used this verse. This is out of Psalms chapter 78, verse 40, talking about the children of Israel coming out of Egypt and how they tempted him and all of these things. And it says in verse 40, how oft did they provoke him in the wilderness and grieve him in the desert? Yea, they turned back and tempted God and limited the Holy One of Israel. And on January the 31st, 2002, I was at a ministers conference, our own ministers conference in Buena Vista, and I was talking to a man at midnight and just telling him about all the things God was speaking to him, and that verse came back, and I remember right there, I said, that's what the problem is. I'm not thinking big enough. Now remember the context. We had just started on television. We had doubled in 2 years what it had taken me 32 years to accomplish, and yet the Lord showed me I was thinking small. And so I got up the next morning in front of that whole ministers conference and I repented and I said, man, I'm limiting God. God wants to do more than what I'm allowing him. And then I'm sure you remember, it was about 10 days later, I got my whole staff together. There was 28 people on staff, and I apologized and I said, I'm limiting God.
I do remember.
I'm holding him back. You remember that?
I do.
And I said, I don't know how long it takes to change this image on the inside. And at that time, I didn't really understand about the imagination. That's one of the things that I got out of this. But I just knew that what I was seeing on the inside didn't match what I'd heard God speak to me. And I said, I don't know how long it takes to change this image, whether it's a day, a month, a week, or whatever, but whatever, I'm going to think different. And I mean, immediately, everything began to change. Even before I sent out a letter to our mailing list and told them about what God had told me, our income began to double on a weekly basis over what it had been. And I'd been trying to go on the Daystar network for 2 years. And Marcus and Joni Lamb were friends of mine. I'd been on their program. They had given me 45 minutes to stand there and just preach. And they were super nice to me, but every time I contacted them about going on Daystar, it just wouldn't work out. And within a couple of days of me saying, I'm going to change the image on the inside of me, Marcus Lamb sent me a registered letter that says, why aren't you on Daystar? You just get your program to us. You start this coming Monday. We will give you a price that will make it work. And I mean, when I started changing the way I thought on the inside, instantly, everything on the outside began to change. Our finances doubled before I could even tell anybody. Something I'd been trying to do, go on Daystar for 2 years, all of a sudden fell in place. And I mean, it's just like this explosion went off.
Well, I saw it. I saw it happen, and it was amazing. I was there, and you know, when you made that transition in your thinking, and then took us to the building that we eventually went into. We went to a couple of other large buildings as well, but the Elkton facility was obviously the one the Lord had in mind. And that, to me, was the end of the rainbow. I thought, well, this is it. And so we were there for how long, how many years? I guess about 2010, we had to start thinking bigger because we had outgrown that facility.
Yeah.
And so this thing began to really take off based on that revelation from the Lord.
Yeah, that building, we went from 14,000 square feet to 110,000 square feet, but only 10,000 of that was usable. And so the rest of it had been a mill work for woodworking, and we had to gut it and take out all of their systems and stuff like that. And it was just an empty warehouse.
Yeah.
And I remember that we moved in there. We moved our executives into the front 10,000 square feet that had offices, but the rest of it was just gutted. And we made our television programs in this empty warehouse for quite a while.
I'm so proud of that. We put this table in the empty warehouse.
Yeah.
Your chair would be set there, and then in the regular set, I had a couple of pillows that I would put on the floor beside it, just for accent color. I put those on the floor of the warehouse, and just so there would be a tie-in to the old set. But that was so wonderful, and never forget the day that the loader came through the program behind you and just blew you out, and you looked at me and said, I said, nope, keep going. It's a beautiful thing.
And the
people will understand.
The guy's dog followed that loader everywhere. So the loader came through my television program with the dog walking behind it.
Yeah.
That was funny. I remember one time driving my pickup in there and parking it,
right,
and using that kind of as a backdrop. And so we filmed in there.
Right. No, that was when you had put tape on the floor.
Yeah.
And you were envisioning the finished building in that warehouse by having a floor plan in duct tape on the floor, and you would walk and you wouldn't go through a wall. You would go only through doorways that were
I was envisioning
it, like in your teaching on imagination. You were seeing it.
Yep.
And I was there with the cameras recording it. And what a great honor it's been, Andrew, really. And at that time, our department might have grown, I think in 2004, 2003, 2004, we might have had 4 or 5 employees. And we were about to develop a studio in that building for the first time and enable the growth that we see now through television.
And let me say to those of you
amazing.
watching, this isn't us just really reminiscing about what God has done for us, but we're trying to illustrate what thinking bigger will do. And this book that I've got entitled Don't Limit God, I wrote this in 2002 when God gave me this revelation. And I've expanded it. Now I've got a teaching here. Here's my CDs on Don't Limit God, and then here's another one, Don't Limit God 20 years later, talking about the difference. And I've got a teaching that goes into imagination. That's one of the things that God really did big in my life. That's one of the ways I started taking the limits off of God, because until you can see something on the inside, You can't see it on the outside. And so, man, the ministry has just transformed. And again, we aren't doing this just for ourselves, but we're trying to tell you that God has big plans for you. And the Lord wants to do something significant with every single one of you. He's never made a person just to be a placeholder, just to occupy space. He wants your life to count. There's people that He's wanting to touch in you and through you. And these things that God did for me, He wants to do it for you. And I promise you, this teaching on Don't Limit God, the subtitle is Imagine Yourself Successful. And most people just don't understand the power of your imagination. I've also got this little static cling sticker. You peel this off. I don't know what it takes to peel it off, but it does come off, and it'll just stick to a mirror. It'll stick to a windscreen, anything like that. And all of these things are just to tell you that God has bigger plans for you than what you've experienced, and we all need to believe bigger. And so Stephen and I have seen it here in television. And what we're doing is just really trying to glorify God 25 years later and say, only God could have done this. I'm not smart enough. You know, I've given this story many times. My mother, right before she died, she looked at me and she said, Andy, you aren't smart enough to do this. And I said, yes, I agree. And it's just God.
You know what? You're approachable, and you're one of us. And that's what people sense when you talk to them across the table like this. And what they receive from you is what God has done in your life. This is consistent throughout your ministry now, that you don't just teach something you learned in seminary or you got from reading. You do your share of reading and studying, but when the Holy Spirit changes you in some significant way, that is something that you teach in a way that really is approachable and accessible to people. And the fact that you were, a Texan and a cowboy, and if you'll notice, when we first started the program, the original open, which we put in that 12-minute video, is you and Jamie walking through the Aspens in Colorado, beautiful fall day, and the two of you walking along, and there's this great moment where you look and smile at each other, and I filmed that with my wife. She was working with me, and before we went on television, we captured that video, and I said, well, that's it. That's Andrew. That's who he is. He and Jamie. We don't need a big fancy open. And so what we would do is say, welcome to Gospel Truth with Andrew Wommack, a teaching ministry that emphasizes God's unconditional love and grace. And now here's Andrew. But the point is, you're one of us, and if we were to dress you up in some kind of hyped up open that was setting you up to be something different, people wouldn't have had that sense of connection with you.
It does say something about who I am and stuff, just our lack of flash.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And let me say to those of you watching, you may not realize this, but Stephen really understands who I am. He understands my heart. And Stephen has been the one who's responsible for packaging me. He hadn't changed me, but he's found out who I am. And everything he does packages this. And of course, you wouldn't know these things, but Stephen's on my executive team. And we have a lot of team meetings. And I remember many times in this ministry when somebody had come in and they'd want to start marketing or doing something, and Stephen would say, that's not who Andrew is. And Stephen has been like an anchor that holds everything in a certain way. The branding, the look of the programs, the way that we advertise things, I can trust Stephen and the people that are under him to package everything in a way consistent with who I am. They are not using these programs and selling products just to manipulate people. They're doing it in a way to minister to people. And you've been invaluable, Stephen. No. I really appreciate it. God sent you to me. It was awesome.
Well, thank you. You're so generous, Andrew, to acknowledge that. And I'm honored to just have been chosen by God before I met you. And I asked him sincerely from my heart, I feel you sending me somewhere to serve you. Where is it? Give me a broom. I'll push broom. I literally said that to the Lord.
That's a good attitude.
And so when I walked in your door, everything began to happen that we see now.
And again, that had to be God, because there was nothing impressive about that door.
Wasn't me either.
So let me mention that we've got these products. I mentioned this little static cling sticker. It comes off of here and it will just stick to anything. And you can put it on a mirror or something. And it's just a reminder. I've got these all over my house. Don't limit God, Psalm 78, 41. And then I've got this teaching, this book. This is trying to describe what God has done for me. And I have literally had hundreds of people that have told me personally, I'm sure there's thousands or tens of thousands of people, that this teaching has really spoken to them. I was just talking to, I won't mention his name because I'm not sure which one it was, but one of the, if I was to mention his name, you'd know who it was. And he was saying he probably read this thing 10 times at least, the very first time he got it, and it's totally changed his life and ministry. So we've got that. We've got some free little booklets here. This one is about the power of imagination. This one is about don't limit God, which using your imagination properly is a part of that. And we got study guide and other things. But I just really want to encourage you that what God has done for me, He wants to do in your life. The motive behind these programs is to celebrate 25 years of God's faithfulness and what He's done, but really, the benefit to you is to let you know that if God has done it for me, He'll do it for you. And you know, I'm not upset with who I am. I'm content in my skin, but I am not the sharpest knife in the drawer. If I was God, I wouldn't have chosen me. And yet, because I've trusted God, God has used me. And if God can use me, and if God can fulfill the dreams in my life, then I can guarantee you He can do the same thing for you. So I really encourage you to please get these products, and please be encouraged by what Stephen and I are sharing, because we're just trying to give testimony to the Lord and His faithfulness, and say that what He's done for us, He'll do for any single person watching this. You know, we have a number on your screen, and you can call, and there's people that will pray with you, and you can ask and request these products. You can also go to our website and get these things absolutely free as a download. But we want you to have this, and I want you to reach your full potential and take the limits off of God. That's what it's all about. So listen to our announcers. He gives you some information, and please call or write to receive the product and receive prayer. God bless you, and we'll be back again tomorrow.
Andrew is offering his booklets, Take the Limits Off God and Believing is Seeing, in either English or Spanish, as his free gifts to you today. This offer is limited to one set of booklets per household and is available in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Contact us today to receive your free booklets. Andrew's complete series, Don't Limit God, is available as a book, study guide, CD album, and as a TV DVD album made from our daily television broadcast. You can also receive a free Don't Limit God sticker when you contact us. Also available today is the Don't Limit God 20 Years Later CD and TV DVD album. Each of these valuable resources are available for a gift of any amount when you contact us. This entire series is also available for audio download, absolutely free, from our website. You can call the Andrew Wommack Ministries Canada helpline Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time at 647-348-2220 to order.
Am I a mistake?
Did God overlook me?
Why do I still deal with depression?
I need direction.
Why does life feel meaningless?
Have I wasted my
Why am I
life?
so sick?
Is it
Why don't
too
I
late
know what
for
to
me?
do?
Have I blown it?
God's people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. If you've got any problem in your life, it's really because you don't understand fully what God has done. This word is the greatest gift that God has ever given us, because this is how we know Him. I'm promising you, preparation time is never wasted time. Regardless of what you feel that God has called you to do, you need to be prepared.
At Charis Bible College, you will be transformed by the Word of God. You will develop your relationship with God and ability to hear His voice. That is what is going to transform your life, your vision, and your future. It's not too late. Stop disqualifying yourself. No matter who you are or what you've done, God still has a plan for you.
Michael was born in 2003, a healthy baby, but right after probably the first month or two, we started seeing rashes. By the time he was a year old, we had gotten him diagnosed. He was allergic to gluten, eggs, dairy, nuts. Then the asthma started when he was about 2 or 3 years old. One time, he started having an asthma attack. He was gasping for air and literally arching his back, and I thought he was gonna die in my arms. We saw ourselves going to the ER twice a year.
We had gone to the doctor and he told him, this is something that he's never gonna grow out of. This is something you're gonna have to learn to deal with the rest of your life. So we prayed together for what I think is the first time in our marriage. And the two of us just prayed and said, God, what are we missing?
At this moment, a neighbor invited them to a healing night.
We took Michael up and he got prayed for.
We went home and with the approach of, well, Michael, either the word is true or it's not. Either by Jesus' stripes, you are healed or you're not.
You're healed now. So here's some pizza. I don't know if it was 20 minutes or an hour later. Heaven brings Michael into me, and he's covered from head to toe in hives, and he can't breathe. I just started reading scriptures over him, Isaiah 53 and 1 Peter 2:24, and I watched the hives disappear from that boy's body.
It was bit by bit, and we really had to ease into it, just because it was everything against I'd ever been taught.
It just took a few months till Michael was completely free of all symptoms, where he could eat anything he wanted to, and just walk in that healing.
Our lives have been completely changed. Now it's normal for me and my brothers to go and play soccer with friends. I didn't think that that would become normal for me ever.
I'd like to let all of you, our Canadian viewers, know that we have a Bible college in Toronto, and we would love to have you come and be a part of it. There's multiple ways you can take advantage, not only through the campus there in Toronto, but we have online courses, we have correspondence courses, just a number of ways, but we want to help you, and we're making it as available to you as we possibly can. So check it out. The information's on your screen, our Charis Bible College, Toronto.
If Andrew's teachings are making a difference in your life, consider becoming a grace partner with Andrew Wommack Ministries Canada today. Go to awmc.ca or call our helpline Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time at 647-348-2220. Also, to learn more about the vision and mission of Andrew Wommack Ministries Canada, be sure to visit our website at awmc.ca. While there, you'll also find details about all of the products available and be able to access many of Andrew's teachings absolutely free. You can listen to them while you're online or download them for later and listen on the go. Remember, that's awmc.ca.